Welcome, and thank you for being here. You're listening to History for Sleep, a place where the past unfolds slowly, gently, and without urgency. Here, we explore humanity's greatest mysteries, forgotten knowledge, and ancient worlds at a pace that allows curiosity to wander and rest to arrive naturally. If you enjoy calm storytelling, deep history, and long journeys through time, you're in the right place. And if you find yourself returning, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing this channel with someone who enjoys falling asleep alongside history. Now let the day fade, settle into stillness, and allow the ocean of the past to carry you. Tonight, we're traveling far beyond the edge of recorded maps. Before compasses, before longitude, before charts or coordinates, humans crossed vast oceans using nothing but the stars. They sailed into darkness without knowing what lay ahead, trusting the sky above, the water below, and knowledge carried quietly in memory. This is the story of how ancient mariners navigated the world before maps existed, and how, in some cases, they may have known more than we ever imagined. For most of human history, the sea was not a boundary. It was a road, but it was a dangerous one. Open water offers no landmarks, no paths, no reassurance. Lose sight of land and every direction looks the same. One mistake could mean drifting endlessly or vanishing entirely. And yet, long before modern navigation, humans crossed the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean, and the Atlantic with astonishing precision. They did not wander randomly. They traveled with intent. And they arrived. Oh, the answer begins with the night sky. Ancient mariners saw the stars not as decoration, but as structure. The sky was a moving map, predictable, repeatable, and reliable. Every night, stars rose and set in fixed patterns. Constellations followed seasonal paths. Certain stars never moved at all. These patterns became guides. The most important of all was the North Star, Polaris. Nearly motionless in the sky, it marked true north. By measuring its height above the horizon, sailors could determine their latitude, how far north or south they were. They did this without instruments. They used hands, fingers, knuckles, memory. The distance between stars was measured using the body itself. A clenched fist at arm's length, the width of 2 fingers, the span of a palm. Navigation lived in muscle memory. But not all seas offered a North Star. In the southern hemisphere, mariners relied on different anchors in the sky. The Southern Cross, the Magellanic Clouds, and complex star paths passed down orally through generations. Nowhere was this knowledge more refined than in Polynesia. Polynesian navigators crossed thousands of miles of open ocean, sometimes traveling weeks without seeing land, and still arrived at specific islands with remarkable accuracy. They did not write their knowledge down. They memorized it. The sky was divided into star houses, regions where specific stars rose and set. Each star marked a direction. Each direction corresponded to an island, a wind, or a current. To sail toward a destination, a navigator aligned their canoe with a rising or setting star, holding that star in position all night, then switching to the next as the sky turned. This was called star path navigation. It required absolute concentration. Sleep came in fragments. Attention never drifted. But the stars were only part of the story. Ancient mariners also read the ocean itself. Waves move in patterns. Long swells generated by distant storms can travel thousands of miles. These swells intersect, overlap, and bend when they encounter land. Polynesian navigators could feel these changes through the hull of the canoe. They knew when land was beyond the horizon because the waves told them. Birds were another guide. Certain seabirds never travel far from land. If they appeared at dawn and flew in a specific direction, land was likely that way. If birds disappeared at nightfall, sailors knew they were too far offshore. Clouds too revealed secrets. Clouds form differently over land than over open ocean. Atolls reflect light upward, creating a faint glow beneath clouds long before land is visible. To an untrained eye, the sky looked empty. To a navigator, it was crowded with signs. This level of knowledge was not individual. It was communal. Navigation was taught slowly over decades. Apprentices learned by watching, listening, and sailing. Mistakes were corrected gently, because mistakes at sea were unforgiving. And here is where things grow more mysterious. Some traditions suggest navigators could sense direction even without stars, during storms or overcast nights. They spoke of feeling the ocean's pull, or knowing direction through the body itself. Modern science struggles to explain this fully. Some suggest sensitivity to wave patterns. Others propose awareness of wind, sound, or even subtle electromagnetic cues. There are even fringe theories, controversial, unproven, that humans may possess a dormant sense similar to migratory animals. There is no clear evidence, but the stories persist, and what we do know is this: ancient mariners did not rely on a single method. They layered knowledge: stars, waves, wind, birds, clouds, smell, sound. Navigation was not calculation, it was awareness. As civilizations grew, other maritime cultures developed their own systems. In the Mediterranean, Phoenician sailors mastered coastal navigation and open sea crossings using stellar rise points and prevailing winds. They identified specific stars for east-west travel long before the concept of longitude existed. Viking navigators sailed the North Atlantic under extreme conditions. They followed sun paths, sea color changes, bird migrations, and possibly used sunstones, crystals that reveal polarized light, allowing sailors to locate the sun even through clouds. Once dismissed as myth, sunstones have since been tested, and they work. Again, ancient knowledge waiting quietly for validation. Chinese mariners tracked the motion of the moon and stars alongside seasonal wind cycles. Arab sailors in the Indian Ocean developed sophisticated star compasses, naming dozens of stars used for navigation, knowledge later absorbed into European seafaring. But not all ancient navigation stories are comfortable. There are whispers of voyages we cannot fully explain, legends of crossings far earlier than officially recorded, maps that seem too accurate for their time, cultural similarities across oceans that raise difficult questions. Did ancient sailors reach farther than we admit? Did some knowledge vanish with them? As we move deeper into this journey, we'll explore these theories carefully, separating evidence from speculation and mystery from myth. For now, let the sea grow calm. Imagine a canoe beneath a turning sky. No compass, no map, only stars, ancient, steady, and waiting. As ancient mariners ventured farther from shore, navigation became less about knowing where you were, and more about remembering where you were going. Without maps, direction was not drawn on parchment. It lived in memory. In Polynesian cultures, navigators carried entire archipelagos in their minds. Each island was linked to star paths, wave patterns, seasonal winds, and even stories. These stories were not entertainment, they were mnemonic devices. A tale about a god chasing the moon might encode the rising position of a specific star. A chant describing a journey could contain exact sailing directions, distances, and hazards. To forget the story was to lose the route. And so, navigation was sacred. In some societies, only a few individuals were trained as master navigators. Their knowledge was protected, passed only to chosen successors. When colonization disrupted these traditions, much of this knowledge vanished within a generation. In Micronesia, navigators used something even more unusual: stick charts. These were not maps in the modern sense. They did not represent land at scale. Instead, they modeled wave behavior. Thin sticks showed dominant swells. Curved pieces marked how waves bent around islands. Shells indicated land masses. These charts were not carried at sea. They were memorized beforehand. At sea, the navigator relied entirely on bodily sensation, feeling wave interference through the hull, sensing direction through balance and sound. To an outsider, this seems impossible. But modern experiments with trained navigators have shown they can accurately identify island direction purely through wave patterns. Again, the ocean speaks. In the Indian Ocean, Arab and Swahili sailors developed navigation systems tied to the monsoon. They understood that winds reverse direction seasonally, allowing reliable round-trip trade across thousands of miles. They named stars for navigation, tracked lunar cycles, and recorded routes in poetic form. These poems acted as both guide and warning, reminding sailors of reefs, currents, and safe harbors. Navigation here was predictive. You didn't just know where you were. You knew what the sea would become. In Northern Europe, Vikings sailed during short summers and long nights. Their success depended on timing and environmental awareness. They watched the color of water, greener near land, darker in open sea. They followed whales and seabirds. They tracked temperature shifts and the presence of ice. And then there is the sunstone again. Saga texts describe sailors finding the sun when the sky was fully clouded. For centuries, this was considered metaphorical. Until scientists demonstrated that certain crystals reveal polarized light patterns invisible to the naked eye, allowing the sun's position to be determined with surprising accuracy. This does not prove Vikings used sunstones, but it makes the idea plausible. Now let us step into more controversial waters. There are theories suggesting ancient mariners reached the Americas long before Columbus, not just Vikings but others. Some point to similarities in boat design, others to shared crops, symbols, or legends. There are accounts of African, Polynesian, and even Asian contact across oceans. Most of these theories remain debated. Evidence is fragmentary. But what is clear is this: ancient mariners were capable of far more than we once believed. They crossed distances that seemed impossible without maps, and returned. This suggests something important. They trusted their systems, and those systems worked. But not all voyages ended in success. Many ships vanished. Many stories ended abruptly. And with each loss, knowledge risked disappearing forever. Navigation knowledge was fragile. It lived only as long as people did. When societies collapsed, navigational wisdom went with them. When writing replaced oral tradition, some embodied knowledge could not be translated. You cannot write how a wave feels. You must experience it. This may be why modern recreation struggled to replicate ancient navigation fully. We can study the stars. We can model currents. But we cannot easily recover intuition trained from childhood. There is also the question of why ancient people navigated at all. It was not only trade. It was curiosity. It was exploration. It was survival. Islands offered resources. Seas offered routes. The unknown offered possibility. Navigation was humanity's first global science. And perhaps the first expression of trust. Trust in patterns, in memory, in the sky itself. As the night deepens, let your thoughts drift with the turning stars. Imagine lying on a deck, the sound of water against wood. The sky moving slowly above you. Every star in its place. And you know without doubt which way to go. Navigation did not only move ships, it moved ideas. Every ancient sea route became a thread stitching distant cultures together. Long before written treaties or empires, the ocean carried language, belief, technology, and myth. When sailors learned to cross open water, isolation ended. Civilizations that mastered navigation gained something rare: foresight. They could plan seasons ahead. They could predict arrivals. They could choose when to risk the sea and when to wait. This changed power. The Phoenicians, often called the first true maritime civilization, built their influence not through armies but through routes. Their ships followed coastlines at first, using landmarks and the stars. Over time they dared deeper crossings. They named stars for navigation, some of which still carry names derived from Phoenician and Arabic today. Their alphabet spread along these routes. Navigation quietly rewired the world. In the Mediterranean, Greek sailors inherited and expanded this knowledge. They attempted to describe navigation mathematically, using geometry, angles, and celestial spheres. Yet even they relied heavily on practical observation. Plato wrote about sailors who understood the heavens better than philosophers, because sailors needed results, not theory. In China, navigation evolved differently. Mariners used lodestones long before the magnetic compass became common elsewhere. Early compasses were not used to find north at sea, but to align structures and rituals on land. Eventually, this knowledge moved offshore. Chinese navigators combined compass direction with star observation, coastal geography, and detailed sailing manuals. These manuals listed currents, hazards, landmarks, and wind patterns, a blend of science and experience. Still, even with writing, much knowledge remained unwritten. Some things could not be standardized. The smell of land, the sound of waves breaking beyond sight, the sudden silence when birds vanish. These were learned, not taught. There is a quiet pattern across cultures. Navigation knowledge was often intertwined with spirituality. The stars were not just reference points, they were ancestors, guides, deities. To read the sky was to participate in something larger than survival. This spiritual framing helped preserve knowledge. Sacred information was less likely to be altered or forgotten. But it also meant knowledge could be lost suddenly, if rituals were interrupted, if lineages broke. Colonization was devastating in this way. When indigenous navigators were dismissed, replaced, or prohibited from practicing, centuries of refinement disappeared. Only fragments remain. Modern researchers now work with surviving navigators, especially in Polynesia, to relearn lost techniques. What they've discovered is humbling. These methods are not primitive. They are sophisticated systems integrating astronomy, oceanography, biology, and psychology, all without instruments. And this brings us to a deeper question. Why did ancient navigation work so well? Because it was adaptive. Unlike fixed maps, these systems changed with the environment. They responded to season, latitude, weather, and experience. A navigator was not following a route. They were having a conversation with the world. This is something modern navigation rarely requires. GPS does not ask you to notice the sky. It does not ask you to feel the sea. It asks only for power. And when that power disappears, we are suddenly lost. Ancient sailors expected uncertainty. They trained for it. They accepted that no voyage was identical. Their confidence came not from control, but from familiarity. They knew how things behaved when they went wrong. This may be their greatest legacy. Not the routes, but the mindset. The understanding that nature does not need to be conquered to be understood. It needs to be listened to. As night settles further, imagine the long chain of sailors before you, each one looking up at the same stars. Different languages, different beliefs, the same sky, guiding them home. The routes that remain unsolved are not marked by missing lines on maps. They are marked by silence. Across the ancient world, there are voyages we know must have happened, but left almost no trace of how they were done. One of the most enduring mysteries is contact. Not whether ancient peoples could cross oceans, but how often they did. Archaeological evidence suggests that long-distance sea contact occurred far earlier than once believed. Crops, animals, and artifacts appear in places they should not logically be, unless carried across vast water. Sweet potatoes in Polynesia, African plants in the Indian Ocean islands. Similar boat designs emerging thousands of miles apart. Each discovery raises the same quiet question. Who sailed first? And how did they know where they were going? Some researchers suggest lost maritime traditions, schools of navigation that flourished briefly, then vanished. These may have existed in regions prone to natural disasters, where records were destroyed and oral lineages broken. Others point to the sea itself as the eraser. Wood rots. Ships sink. Routes leave no scars. Navigation knowledge was often carried by a small number of individuals. If a master navigator died unexpectedly, an entire system could disappear. There are also stories, preserved in myth, that hint at forgotten crossings, legends of sunken lands, teachers who arrived from the sea, heroes guided by stars no longer named. While these accounts are often dismissed, they may encode real navigational memory, transformed into story as precise instruction became less relevant. Consider the possibility that some routes were intentionally forgotten. Navigation is power. Knowing how to cross an ocean grants access, trade, escape, and influence. Some societies may have chosen to limit who held that knowledge, embedding it in ritual, taboo, or secrecy. In Polynesia, navigation knowledge was traditionally restricted. It was passed selectively, sometimes to only one successor. This preserved accuracy, but increased vulnerability. One broken link and the chain ends. When Europeans arrived with instruments, many indigenous systems were deemed obsolete. They weren't. They were simply unreadable to outsiders. And so they faded. Yet traces remain. Modern experimental voyages have shown that ancient techniques still work. Voyagers have crossed thousands of miles using only stars, swells, birds, and memory, arriving within a few miles of their targets. No compass, no clock, no map, just relationship. This challenges a deeply held assumption that technological progress always moves forward. In navigation, something was lost. Not capability, but awareness. Ancient sailors did not separate themselves from the environment. They merged with it. The sea was not an obstacle, it was a guide. As the world slowly modernized, the sky grew quieter. Artificial light dimmed the stars. Engines replaced wind. Routes became fixed, standardized, efficient. But efficiency erased intimacy. Today, very few people can look at the night sky and find direction. Even fewer can do so while moving, while waves shift beneath them, while the horizon disappears. And yet, the stars remain. They have not changed. They still rise and set in the same patterns that guided the first sailors. Waiting. As you rest now, imagine the deck of a wooden vessel at night. No lamps, no instruments, only water and sky. A navigator stands quietly, feeling the rhythm of the sea, listening to the wind, watching a familiar star lift from the horizon. They do not rush. They do not doubt. They know that direction is not something you force. It is something you recognize. Let us slow down now. The ocean is calm. The vessel moves steadily forward, guided not by urgency but by patience. Ancient mariners understood something that modern maps often forget, that navigation is not about control but about trust. They trusted patterns. The slow rise of certain stars at particular seasons. The way ocean swells travel long distances, even when the wind changes. The behavior of birds that never stray far from land. The color of the water, the smell of the air, the shape of clouds at the horizon. Each sign alone meant little. Together they formed a language learned over generations. This knowledge was not written. It was lived. Children grew up watching elders read the sea the way others read books. Directions were sung. Distances remembered through rhythm and story. Star paths were memorized as journeys across the sky, not coordinates on a chart. To forget was dangerous. To remember was survival. Yet even these careful systems could fade. Climate shifts altered familiar winds. Volcanic eruptions darkened skies. Rising seas reshaped coastlines. When the environment changed faster than memory could adapt, some routes were abandoned. Others became legends. And so the sea filled with ghosts of journeys once routine, now impossible to retrace. Modern science continues to rediscover what ancient sailors already knew. That waves carry information. That stars provide stable reference points. That the human brain is capable of astonishing spatial memory when trained patiently. But something remains difficult to measure. The inner stillness required to navigate without certainty. Ancient sailors accepted uncertainty as part of the voyage. They did not expect straight lines. They expected adjustment. They moved not toward destinations but along relationships, between sky, sea, and self. This is perhaps why their stories endure, not as technical manuals, but as reminders that progress does not always mean replacement. Sometimes it means remembering. As your breathing slows, imagine the stars overhead. They are the same stars seen by sailors thousands of years ago. The same quiet lights marking paths across darkness. You do not need to follow them tonight, only to know they are there, steady, unmoving, patient, just like the knowledge they once carried. Thank you for spending this time with History for Sleep. If you enjoyed this journey, let it drift with you into rest. The ocean will continue its slow motion. The stars will keep their watch. And history will remain calm, waiting, and close whenever you wish to return.